Everyone, it's Sarah. Are you ready to gobble till you wobble? Well, today's video, I'm going to show you how to make this fun and silly bandana for your dog, your cat, or any size pet. Now, the crochet pattern has two sizes included, the extra small and the small. But I'm going to show you how you can adjust it smaller or larger so that it can work for any size pet. The free crochet pattern is in the notes underneath this video. What you're going to need to make a bandana is you're going to need some beige, some sort of variegated, white, black, a little bit of red, and a little bit of orange. And so what we're going to be using is a combination of different worsted weight number 4 or medium weight number 4 yarns. The variegated that we're using is I Love This yarn. It's called Autumn Stripe, and it has a nice variegated to it. There is a Red Heart Super Saver and also a Lion brand that's a worsted weight number 4 in an autumn or variegated type yarn. And we'll be using the variegated for the trim and the little curl. You're going to need a beige. This is also I Love This yarn, worsted weight number 4. And you can use any color. I'm sticking with the lighter beige, but if you want to make your turkey brown, you certainly can. It's just hard to see in the video. I'm going to be making, I'm going to set this here so you can see what I'm talking about. I'm going to be making the beak with this gold. I've got a little bit of red for the gobble. I'm going to use this white for the eyes, and then I've got a little bit of black for the pupil. So you need a lot of little colors and little amounts, and it really doesn't take that much to make the bandana itself. Maybe about 2 ounces or more, depending on how big you're going to make it. We're going to be stitching today with our H hook, and the H is a 5.00 millimeter crochet hook. You're going to need a needle, because we're going to need to weave in our ends, of course, but also sewing on our pieces. And then, of course, you'll need your scissors. We're going to be starting down at the point of our bandana and working our way out. We're going to begin with a slip knot and chain 4. We're going to place 4 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook. Our first 3 chains will count as our first double crochet. Yarn over, go in the 4th chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through the first 2, yarn over, and go through the second 2. So now I need to stitch 3 more right in that same chain 4. Whoops, I got the string caught on my finger. So our chain 3 counts as 1, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're going to chain 3 and turn. Now for row 2, we're going to place a double crochet in the same stitch as our chain 3. And on this bandana, on every row, the chain 3 will count as our first double crochet. Then we'll stitch a double crochet in the next 3, 1, 2, and 3. Then we'll stitch 2 double crochets in the last stitch. And of course that last stitch is the chain 3 that counted as our first double crochet. And chain 3. So now we started with 5, and now we have 7, because we increased at this end and at this end. And we're going to do that for every row. All right, I'm going to be making the bandana in the extra small size to fit my Maximo. But I am going to explain to you how to make it in the bigger sizes and how to do that as we go. All right, so I'm going to turn. Again, my chain 3 counts as my first double crochet. I will double crochet in that same stitch. That gives us one increase. Then we'll double crochet in each stitch across. Then when we reach that last stitch, we'll stitch 2 double crochets. And I think now you can see how the pattern works. Go ahead and chain 3. So now we have 9. We started with 5, we had 7, and now we have 9. Because on every row, we're increasing at the beginning and the end. All right, so I'm going to turn and repeat. 1 double crochet in the same stitch as my chain 3. 1 double crochet in each stitch across until we reach that last stitch. Now we're at the last stitch, and we're going to stitch 2 double crochets. And so now we're at 11 double crochets. 5, 7, 9, 11, chain 3, and turn. And we will repeat this for as many rows as needed for the size we're making. If we're making the extra small size, we're going to repeat this for 3 more rows. And so what you'll do in order to make it as big as you would like it, you'll continue to repeat, increase 1 double crochet all the way across, 2 double crochets in the last, so that you're increasing at the beginning and the end of each row until your triangle is as big as you would like it. All right, so I'm going to do another row. Double crochet in the same stitch as my chain 3, 1 double crochet in each stitch across. There we go. And now I'm to that last stitch, and I'll stitch 2 double crochets. And like I said, you're increasing by 2 stitches each row because we're increasing, whoops, at the beginning and at the end of each row. So since I'm doing the extra small, I'm going to be doing 7 rows. So here's 5 double crochets, then we went to 7, 9, 11, 13, and then I need to do 15 and 17, 2 more rows for the extra small. And then if you want to make it even bigger for a much bigger dog, continue to increase until it's the size that you want for your dog. One thing to keep in mind is it does get longer, and if you have a low to the ground dog like maybe a bulldog, you may want to not make it quite as long. You can always turn your bandana to the side so that it can be seen for a family picture. All right, so keep that in mind, that the neck width and the height of the dog does make a difference because you don't want it to get caught in their toenails or their teeth. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and make 2 more rows because I'm making the extra small size. I've got my 7 rows for my extra small size, and once you get your bandana to the length and width that you want it, we're going to chain 3 and just do 1 row of 1 double crochet in each double crochet across. We're not increasing on this row. This is just a row to almost give it like a band at the top, and it's just 1 double crochet and each stitch across, no increases. At the end of this row, we're just going to chain 1. And what we're going to do is we're going to evenly single crochet down the side of our bandana. We'll put 3 single crochets in that point, and then we're going to evenly single crochet back up this other end. Now, there is not a set amount of stitches that you need. What I do is I try to stitch my single crochets in the sides of the stitches and not in the holes. And it's mostly just eyeballing, making sure there isn't any space between, just stitching in the sides of the stitches. If we were to make them all in the holes like this, you would end up with some really big gaping holes. And there might be a place where you can't get the stitch in and you do have to stitch in that hole. But I really try to stitch in the side of the stitches as I'm moving down towards the point of the bandana. And what you want to try to do is keep your stitches close, but not too bunchy, but don't have them on top of each other, and then also don't get them too spread apart where you have like a big gaping hole. Like right there, I feel like that stitch is too far apart, so I'll just pull that out, and I'll put another stitch right in there, like that. Alright, so we're stitching single crochets evenly down to the point of the bandana. Once you've single crocheted down and you reach the point, you'll see there'll be that little hole where we started with our first chain 3 and then 4 double crochets. Just go right in there and stitch 3 single crochets. And then we'll turn and we'll work right up the side of the bandana. Again, just stitching in the stitches that we can, evenly working up the side of the bandana. So here's where I single crocheted down. I put those 3 single crochets in the point, and then I single crocheted back up. And now what we're going to do is we're going to add the ties, and then we'll slip stitch across, and we add the other tie. Now for the small size, I'm only going to chain 20. I chained my 20 stitches. This is where you need to decide, depending on the size bandana that you're making, how long you want to make the ties. And let me show you. If you'll notice, I don't make them very long because I don't want them getting caught in their toenails or their teeth. And so what I do is I make them relatively short, and then as I put it on the dog, I set the tie. There we go. And then once that's set, all I have to do is slide that onto the dog's head. I don't have to tie that every time. And so keep that in mind when you're deciding on the length that you want. For the extra small, I chain 20. For the small, I chain 25. And you can chain more or less depending on your size. Once you get the amount of chains chained that you want, we're going to turn and slip stitch in the second chain. And of course the slip stitch is go in, pull up a loop, and then pull that loop through the loop on your hook. And so we're going to slip stitch back over the chain till we reach back to the body of our bandana. I've slip stitched all the way back, and I'm to the top of my bandana. I'm going to slip stitch in that first stitch. There we go. And then I'm going to slip stitch across the top, working in those double crochet stitches. And we'll slip stitch all the way across. And this portion is the same for all sizes. Once I get to the other side, we're going to chain the same number that we did for the other side so that our ties will be the same. Alright, so I'm in that last stitch. I've slip stitched across, and now I'm going to chain 20 again because that's how many I chained on the other side. You want to make sure that you chain the same amount. So once you have chained the amount of chains that you need for the size that you're making, we're going to go in the second chain from the hook and stitch a single crochet. And we'll single crochet back down the chain, putting one single crochet in each chain across. I've stitched those single crochets. Now we're going to go in each of those slip stitches that we previously made, and we're going to stitch a single crochet in each of the slip stitches right across the top of our bandana. One single crochet in each of the slip stitches across. All right, now we've got our last single stitch in, and what we're going to do is we're going to finish off stitching single crochets across the slip stitches of the last tie. So I'm stitching one single crochet in each of the slip stitches across. I've made my last single crochet. I'm going to cut my yarn, tie off, and weave in this end. And what we have here is just a basic dog bandana pattern. Go ahead and put my needle in there. There we go. And through some of those stitches and fibers of the yarn, because this definitely is going to get some use, and so we do not want that to come out. All right, so yeah, we have our basic dog bandana pattern, and you can decide which side you want to be the front and the back. This is going to be my front because I just like the way that the stitches lay. The next thing that we need to do is add the variegated trim. To add the little shell stitch edge, we're going to go underneath that first single crochet and join with a chain 1, and then we're going to go right in that same stitch and stitch a single crochet. We're going to skip the next stitch, and then in the next stitch we're going to stitch 3 double crochets. That is the shell stitch that we're using. we're going to skip the next single crochet and then single crochet in the next. Then we'll skip the next and stitch a shell stitch of 3 double crochets. And that's the way the pattern will work, going all the way down and all the way back up to this other side. So skip, single crochet in the next, skip, and shell stitch in the next. Now, if you do not have a variegated, or you just don't want to use a variegated, you could always use orange or a darker brown. You could always use yellow, whatever colors that you want to add just a little extra pizzazz to our turkey is fun. It doesn't really matter. I just like to use the variegated so I don't have to change colors and I get some color variation. There we go. Skip and single crochet. And now I'm going to work up the other side of my bandana doing the same thing. And of course, it doesn't matter what size you're making, this step is the same. Once you have done your shell stitches and single crochets back up here, I don't want you to panic if you only have one stitch or maybe you have 2 stitches, because in adding your single crochets around, and of course it's going to vary what size you make, you may have an extra one up here. Don't let it worry you, or you may have one less. Don't let that worry you. Like here, I have one here, and then I can put my last single crochet right there. The main thing is to try to even up. So you may have to skip one in here, or you may have to skip 2, or you may not skip any at all, just to make sure it's evened up and laying pretty. Because when you add more rows, you're going to have more single crochets down the side. All right, we'll go ahead and cut that. Tie that off, and of course we'll need to weave these 2 ends in. But that's the way your bandana should look now. And we're going to add the eyes, the beak, the little gobble, and of course the little curl. And we'll be doing the little curl next. Let's do our little turkey curl. We'll start with our slip knot, and then we're going to chain 9. All right, we're going to yarn over, and we're going to stitch 3 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, and 3. And then what we're going to do in order to get that curls, we're going to stitch 3 double crochets in each of the chains. So there's 1, 2, and if you're doing it right, you should already have some curl started. So we're stitching 3 double crochets in each of the chains. It's starting to get a little curly, isn't it? All righty. 1, 2, and 3. All righty. So now I've got my curl all ready, and I'm going to cut and leave myself a little bit of a tail so that I can sew that onto my turkey. And tie that off. And now I'm ready to attach that onto my bandana. I already have one eye done and ready to go on the turkey. And I'm going to show you how to make the eyes. Slip knot, chain 4, and then we're going to place 9 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook. 1, 2, 3, 4. Our chain 3 counts as 1, and then we're going to stitch 9 more, so we'll have 10 double crochets. Now don't panic if you get a hole in the center there. I will show you how to close that up. Some more yarn. Alright, let's see how many I have. Here's my chain 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Need to do one more. We're going to join to the top of that chain 3 with a slip stitch and tie off. Alright, now make sure you've left yourself enough yarn so you can sew that onto your turkey. Now we're going to turn this over, grab our needle, and thread that beginning tail on, because we want to close up this hole. We don't want a hole in the center of our turkey eye. So we're just going to gather around, going in those stitches. And we'll just gently pull that, and that'll begin to close. And then we can just weave this in. There we go. Alright, our turkey eye needs a little pupil. So we'll just grab 10 or 12 inches of black yarn, thread that onto our needle. We'll come right up through the center, leave a tail on the back. We'll wrap that yarn 3 times, not too tight, but enough for it to hold, and I usually put my finger on it. And we'll go right next to that hole. We don't want to go back in the same hole just in case it pulls it through. And then we'll gently ease that through. There's our pupil. We'll turn it over. And I always, when I do a little French knot like this on something that's going to be sewed on, I'll just tie a couple knots just so it stays put, because we're going to be sewing it on. It's not going to be affected. Okay, and we need to make sure we make 2, so we have 2 little eyes for our turkey. Alright, so the next thing we need to make is the beak. Alright, to make the beak, we're going to make a slip stitch. We're going to chain 4. We're going to place 3 double crochets in the 4th chain from the hook. We're going to chain 1 and turn, and we're just going to place a single crochet in each of those 4 stitches because our chain 3 counted is our first double crochet. There we go. Sometimes hard to get in the top of that chain 3. There we go. And there's our beak. Remember to leave yourself some yarn when you tie off so you can tie it onto or sew it onto your turkey. There's our beak. We do need to weave this end in. We can do that real quick. Make sure you keep your point there. You don't want to lose your point. Alrighty. Weave that in on there. There we go. So now we have our beak. Now you don't have to make the little wattle gobble thing, but I think it just adds a little bit of cuteness to it. And so it's really super easy to make. You're just going to chain 6. slip knot, chain 6, you're going to turn and slip stitch in the second chain, and then the next chain, and then the next chain, and then single crochet in those last 2. And that's how easy it is just to make that little wobble gobble thing. And we'll leave ourselves some yarn. Tie that off. And I usually go ahead and weave in this end where I started. Just go in the back there. There we go. All right, so now we've got all our pieces and we need to decide how we want the face of our turkey to look. So this one for Rosie that I made, I did the eyes a little bit cockeyed. I put the gobble here and the beak down here and the curl up there. And I'm going to do kind of similar on Maximo's. And usually what I do is I put the eyes on first and then work around where I have the eyes set. So I'm going to put this eye on first. I think I'm going to move it over a little bit so it's a little bit different than Rosie's. So I'm going to put it farther over here. And then what I do is I just stitch around those edges. And one thing to remember is your bandana is a little bit stretchy and your dog's going to be wearing it, running around and playing with the kids probably. And so keep in mind not to put it on too tightly where it doesn't have any give. All right, once you've got it sewn how you want it, we'll just go to the back and weave that in. All right, so now I want to decide where I want my other eye. And I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe I'll just put them on evenly instead of silly. That way we have another look. So I'm going to put this one on evenly. Try to get it evened up over here on the side. And I'll just stitch it on the same way. Going around those edges. Whoops, missed it. There we go. All right, so there's those eyes. I'm afraid this turkey's going to look a little bit frightened with the way I have those eyes on there. Have to make the rest of it look cute. Go ahead and cut that one off. All right, so we've decided we want the eyes right in the center. So the next thing I want to do is add the beak. And then we'll sew that on similar fashion. Actually, I want this to be the front. All right, I'm going to turn it upside down, and I'm going to go in and sew across the top first. That way I know that it's where I want it to be. There we go. And then I can kind of get that point shape by sewing it in place. Whoops. Now I did choose a lighter color on this one for the beak. I went with gold instead of orange. And I did that just because I wanted it to look a little bit different. And one thing that I like to do is I like to go right about here and make sure that my beak has a nice point. You know, kind of pull it down. That's the nice thing about working with crochet is you can kind of ease it where you want it to be when you're sewing it on. All right. The beak's on. All right, so the next thing we want to add is our gobble. And of course, we're just going to put that to the side. And I didn't sew the whole thing down. I really just sewed the top. So I'm going to set it like that. And I'm just going to go under here like this. And sew just a few whip stitches. I want to go through that one stitch. There we go. And it can just kind of gobble around where it wants to, or wobble. I looked up what it was called because I always called them a gobble, and I guess it's called a waddle. But whatever it's called, I think it adds just a little extra cuteness to our bandana. There we go. And the last thing we need to add is our little turkey curl. All right, this turkey looks a little bit more frightened than this one. All right, so what I do is I take these two stitches, or these two, because I don't want to sew the whole thing down. I want it to kind of flop around. And so I'm going to put it right up on the top here. And I'm just going to take my hook and pull one of those through. And then I'll go and pull the other one through. And that's going to sit right up on the top on this one. And then I'll just go to the back and tie this down. That's why I like leaving those two pieces. Make sure it's on there nice and tight and give it a clip. So now I've got two similar bandanas, but actually because of how we did the face, they look different. And of course this one's a little bit smaller because Maximo's a little lower to the ground than Rosie is. So here is our Gobble Gobble Turkey bandanas for dogs, cats, and pets of any size. And where you place the pieces determines the look of the bandana. This one looks silly. This one looks like it's afraid it's getting ready to go in the roaster. So no matter how you make them, I hope you will and have a lot of fun with this pattern. And remember to gobble till you wobble.